Absolutely.
Hey, welcome. Well, welcome. You guys going to intro it? Or?
Let's go, Lee.
Go for it.
Hey?
Leeds online.
Leeds online.
Good to see
Leith
you,
Butterworth. I love Leith. He's a good Leith. You know? He's a good man. Callum Murray, Vic Latoa. Love you guys.
Woo.
How we doing? Shaka's here talking about gender confusion. How's everybody going? Are you all good today? It's wonderful to have you all here and great to have a live group of people here today as well. Why are we here? We are here to talk about clarity around what we are trying to achieve with praise and worship on a Sunday. So we're not really here for anything too grandiose, but just to get to a point where I think sometimes, if we don't talk about things enough, then people can start to wonder, am I doing the right thing?
Yeah.
This is what I'm supposed to. Am I allowed to do this?
Yeah.
We never want our praise and worship leaders to be up there thinking, shoot, am I doing the right thing or the wrong thing? And the easiest way for you to feel like that is by not talking about it. The other thing that I do recognize just so much, and I think it's really important for everybody to always remember this in anything to do with ministry, and that is that the devil's favorite tool is fear.
Yeah.
Fear is not the language of God.
Yeah.
Fear is the language of the devil. 1 John 5:18, perfect love drives out all fear because fear only leads to torment. So it's not God's will for us to live with fear. It's not God's will for us to be intimidated, afraid, apprehensive. God's will is that we're confident, that we are trusting, that we are believing the right things, listening to good reports, and even especially in our own mind.
Right.
I'm not the only person who's ever walked off a platform and gone, I totally shanked that today.
Totally.
In fact, I was at one of the prayer meetings and this young guy was playing keyboards and in the particular campus that I was in for that prayer meeting. And I thought he did such an outstanding job. And the prayer meeting finished and he came walking up to me. And the first thing he said was, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, for what? Was your fly down? I mean, but he thought he'd done a really poor job. I thought he'd done a really great job. But that's what the devil's going to do, right?
Yeah.
He's always going to make us go on a negative report. It's going to fill us with fear, apprehension. So that's what the devil's going to do. And on top of that, what makes it just so much easier is if what we are supposed to do is not clear. And so the goal of this is just for me to, as a non-worship leader, non-musician, try and communicate what I think we want out of praise and worship. I have Shahan sitting next to me, and Ben is here as well, who've been very involved. Nate's also over here, and a room of great people that are with me today. But to try for me just to share with you, this is what I'm really thinking that we want from praise and worship now. That needs to be clear because Arise doesn't stay the same. We evolve through seasons. Our church has seasons, and there are things that we used to do that if we kept trying to say this is what Arise is because this is what we did, it would be saying Arise is who we were. And we'll be trying to pull our church back to, a season that's we're not in right now.
Yeah.
What we need to know is what Arise is supposed to do in this moment, and then move forward with the now word. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're gonna. Yesterday's manna is today's rotting flesh. So we have to make sure that what we're doing is manna from heaven for us today, instruction from heaven for us today. That it's not an old wineskin, because we're declaring a second wave for Arise. Look, just because again, I'm getting used to working with creatives, just to silence any thought. Our style hasn't changed in that sense. Like we're not our values, our ethos. The way you worship led yesterday, keep doing it today. Don't think that I'm trying to say that, but I am just trying to say we just got to keep up with the evolutions of what God is doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, what we're doing at the moment too with Arise, and this doesn't impact conference so much, but we are definitely wanting to have this combo before we roll into conference. But what we are doing with Arise, led by Ben, is that at the moment we are trying to change the way that our church does run sheets. Every week we have a different run sheet. And by different, I mean the praise and worship is different lengths. you know, the notices are different lengths. We've got this amount of videos, which is different lengths. And to be honest with you, even the length of the service is different every week. What we've been trying to do is we've been trying to reframe that question, because every time you have change, you have communication. Every time you have communication, you have the risk of that communication being good or bad, a great experience or a poor experience. So what we've been trying to do has been to say, can we actually just create one run sheet that is for every service every week? Okay, so if you think about it that way, we always have praise and worship, we always have preaching, we always do altar calls, we're always going to pass around the buckets and get some money coming in if we can, and we're always going to have a couple of notices. So could we actually just preset that, put it out there, and then not change it? Like, rather than trying to work out when the link time is going to be, what if we just had a link time? Our link time is, I don't know if this is going to be it, but just for example, our link time is 32 minutes into the church service. If we are linking for the message, that's when we're going to link.
So good.
Oh, cool. So what time's the link time? It's 32 minutes into the service. So if you started at 9:15, it's going to be 9:47. You know what I mean? Like that's what's going to be. Rather than saying these are our 4 songs, I would like to say these are our 7 songs. So then as a campus team, for your service, so we have 7 songs possible for the morning, 7 songs possible for the night. If you've got a worship leader who can't sing this song, nails that song, don't do that one and do this one. Now, the only exception to that would be Arise Originals, where there'll be times where we want to say, hey, we need to introduce this song to all campuses, or building up to Easter. Hey, we need this song to be learned because Easter's coming in 2 weeks. We need, the cross song for Easter, whatever, you know what I mean? Yeah. But we're trying to just make it so that we've set the blocks of time, we give it out to campuses, and then locally you can actually just play with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that there's less change. Is this making sense so far?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a big piece of news, isn't it? Yeah. So we are saying that for the next season of time on Sundays, and we'll start with Sundays, then we'll talk about conference, that praise and worship will be 24 minutes long.
Wow.
Okay. So at the moment, that is about the same with the 5 o'clock services at the moment. It's generally about that length. In the morning, that's a huge increase. Anything from 8 minutes for the 9 a.m. service in the hut to about 2 to 4 minutes, I think, for the 10 a.m. services in most locations. 24 minutes. It's a massive increase. The other big winner for this new run sheet is ministry time. So we are proposing 5 minutes of ministry after every sermon. So that will look differently week to week, preacher to preacher. But there'll be a 30-minute preaching slot, 5 minutes ministry, and then there'll be a 3-minute altar call for salvation. Everyone got that? So that's the overall composition. The losers are notices and verbals. Everything that is not preaching and praise and worship and ministry gets massively truncated in this new run sheet. Okay, you care about praise and worship. Let's talk about that. We are suggesting that praise and worship will be 24 minutes. What you will get on your run sheet is, as a worship team, you will get a 24-minute section that is set apart for praise and worship. Shahan's emailed out this document to every.
It's on the Telegram.
It's on the Telegram.
So it'll be on the conference Telegram or straight from your worship pastor on Telegram. If you don't have it, just go to your worship campus Telegram group and it should be there.
And we can get it to you anyway. You don't strictly need it for this meeting, but I just thought you might like this because, by the way, it's still in draft. So we're gonna keep making this document better. But because I've written the first draft, a lot of people have given me feedback on it, to be honest, and Ben and I are going through it tomorrow. But I just literally just spent an hour or so just going, how can I just give people a lot more obvious, this is what I need to think about when I do it. So then I thought for the praise and worship section, we could just talk that through today. You don't need the document for this to work, so don't stress. Don't spend the next 10 minutes looking for it. It'll be all right. But, okay, so 24 minutes, that's what will be on your timer. 8 minutes of that, I would like you to target as being praise. And then the next 16 minutes, if I got that correct, would be for worship. I want to encourage us in this season of Arise to think about praise and worship as being, I'm going to use a rugby analogy, praise being like the forward pack and worship being like the back line. So when you look at a rugby team, the forward pack has a very, very structured approach to what they do. It is pre-prescribed. It is 90% set piece. Everybody knows exactly what their job is, and it's locked in and very tight. So I want us to think about our praise songs as being very pre-prescribed. So not a lot of like, let's make it up on the spot or spin it wide to float it. I'm not discounting that is, I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying I don't know if we get the win with praise if we prepare for praise the same way we prepare for worship. What we want to do is we want to use praise to get forward momentum. And the danger is that it feels to me, again, non-worship leader, so hear this and just say, John's doing his best to tell you what he observes, and it could be wrong. But I think the danger is that if we try to create a very, very flexible approach to praise, or a very organic and, evolving, spontaneous approach to praise, the danger is that we don't get forward ball. So then we spend 8 minutes and we're still where we were when we started. Does that make sense? So I would love us to think about our goal with praise is to get things moving, right? Get things moving. Get people engaged. Get people clapping. Get people singing out loud, and just get the ball moving. And the way we do that is by excellence, harmony, practice, each part really being structured, and by the praise not taking too long. Why? Because at the end of the day, guys, I know you're musicians and singers, and I'm sorry to say it, but the clock eventually does count. We actually just can't have services go forever. Because people have time. There's just a lot riding on it. We don't want to be tipping God, like it's not like that. But we have to be somewhere this is glorifying of Jesus, this is sacrificial, this leads people into God's presence, and this is actually just an unreasonable expectation on people's time. So we're sort of, and look, are we doing that right? Who knows? We're just doing what we feel. So 8 minutes for praise, keep it really structured. I've sort of said, make that the set piece activity. Shahan's going to give some language to that. But make sure that it's planned, well rehearsed, full sounding. You know what I mean when I say set piece. So what did you explain?
I think one of the key things that I've been taken away from this is when we think about rugby and a set piece play, it's actually well rehearsed and so tight, but it actually achieves a goal at the end. I think about that key goal at the Rugby World Cup when the All Blacks did a throw-in near the line, and it's just like pass, and then to like I think it was a number 2, and he's just Tony Woodcock, and he's just straight over the line. So it's clear. Then everybody knows exactly what's going on. There's no like, I don't know what's happening in this moment. There's no ambiguity around any parts. It's just we're going, and the plan's tight, and we move forward. And we're not, I guess with worship, it's more, there's a bit more freedom to move. There's a bit more ability to gauge the space, so to speak, and kind of play around with that. But I feel like praise is the thing that's going to create momentum for the service. It's our first opportunity to create momentum in that whole service. And I think we got to use that really well.
Yeah. I mean, at the moment, probably where we, as a church, need our services to improve in its praise. I would never singularly say that what people do on stage is the cause of that. It's not. Our congregation needs to buy in. The thing is, the Bible says that we bring the sacrifice of praise.
Yeah.
And I have a concern for the church because praise is actually diminishing in the church today.
Globally.
Well, why is that? Because if most of our worship songs are humanistic, if I sing songs that are all about me, you love me, you care for me, you're on my corner, you're wonderful, I feel safe when I'm with you. If my worship is about me and my praise demands something of me that I don't want to give, then the easiest way for us to lose the essence of God and church is to ratchet out the praise, ratchet up the junk food, the soul food, the it's all about me worship, and we're still having church, but we're not leading people into the presence of Jesus. So I feel like we're actually got to fight for this. We're gonna get people to a point where they are sacrificing in praise, clapping, jumping, shouting, entering in to a vibrancy of God's. They're sacrificially rejoicing before God, right? We're not trying to bring the oxen, the cart on the back of the oxen.
That's right.
We want people carrying it on the shoulders. So we go for it in praise, and then once we've done that, then we begin to enter into worship. So forward ball, get us momentum with praise, get people engaged, so that then when we do get to worship, at that point we've got 16 minutes. That's time enough for two full worship songs, space and freedom, so that as a worship team, worship leaders, you can actually just explore the edges of what's possible. Again, coming back to that rugby field with exploring the edges, you can get out there and we can try some different stuff. We can linger in a low, we can pinnacle in a high, we can repeat a bridge. I really want our worship leaders to feel like you have some freedom to take us somewhere. Take us somewhere. So what do I even mean by that? Go into free worship or prophesy something out in worship. Make declarations vocally. I'd prefer you not to do that speaking, because you get into a spiritual authority question there a little bit. What do I mean by that? Am I being specific enough? If a worship leader starts doing too much of God is going to, like not singing, God is going to move today, there are miracles here, you sort of step into that MC role a little bit. I wouldn't want you to, if you're feeling like a fire in your bones, then I would say go with it and then ask afterwards whether it was the right thing. Honestly, like, if it's a fire in here, do it and then ask afterwards, was that okay? I didn't mean to stop it up, but I felt it. I want you to make mistakes. Okay. But the general tenet of what I'd love you to pitch for is to say, I'm going to sing out those prophetic statements. Okay. So then, there's a change in the atmosphere, like go for it, miracles are flowing, sing it out and go for it. And to say, just to stop for a second and say, I feel something's going to break over someone today, and then get back to singing. That's great. If you start talking for 2 minutes, then that's really not great. Okay. So then you just gotta work that. Talking is not what I want your main vehicle to be as worship leaders. Now, I have seen some worship leaders who just do these little touches. But the other day I was in a service and Fiona was leading and she just said, I really feel something's going to break over over people. And then just started the song of worship. It was great. It was spoken. It wasn't sung. But it made people go, really? Really? Oh, well, I mean, it built faith. It built expectation. So that's great. Now, if she had to preach for 2 minutes about that, then that would have been moving beyond what would have been cool. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that for anybody to feel apprehensive, especially you, Fiona, included in that. I'm just trying to give you some parameters, okay?
Yeah.
So if we can set up everybody for the win, but it was a great win, so well done, and do it again, you know. But I want worship leaders to feel like you've got 16 minutes and you're there to minister and you're there to take us somewhere.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So lead us in. Go for it. Have some freedom. I'm assuming that your freedom normally involves planning for that. Again, not a worship leader. It looks to me like you all just make it up on the spot and you're incredible. But do what you got to do. But there's 16 minutes there to work with. The one thing I do want you to know about this new run sheet is this. When the clock hits 0, there isn't a lot of time for what the MC is going to do next.
That's right.
Okay? Why? Because we have taken the 5 minutes of ministry that we used to have at the end of praise and worship, and we have put it after the message. Because what we've felt is that, again, in the economies of time, that we had essentially worship MCs were, and myself included, I'm the worst culprit, would use that 5 minutes to reprise the praise and worship. You know, so we preach for a minute and then we go back into the praise and worship again, right? So we sort of felt like, and then we get to the end of a message and everybody's like, oh, wow, God's speaking to me. And then we're like, in Jesus' name, amen, because we've got to end it.
Yeah.
So then we're taking it from there and we're saying, okay, so that means that now during the message, you guys are definitely like, where are we going at the end? Which I would say Arise praise and worship teams do better than anybody on earth. Like, you guys are amazing to work with. You're the best worship team on the earth, period. But in that space, just so very, very good. So be ready for that. But what it does mean is that if we've got 40 seconds left and then that 24 minutes is going to be up, what doesn't help is if you're starting into a low with no sense of a horizon coming anytime soon. Okay, you actually have to start about 2 minutes before the service is going to finish. You actually do, as a worship leader, need to start going, okay, I'm aiming for a when that clock hits 0. Okay. And we want you, as a praise and worship team, and especially the worship leaders, to realize we don't want to send anybody else in.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't want to send a campus pastor or an MC out on stage to get that service broken through. We want it to rest on your shoulders, not to break you, but to empower you, to say it's your job to lead that service to a point of spiritual freedom. Okay. You may have questions on what you do to do that, or how, what you're allowed to do that. Please ask them tonight, because I promise I'll stop in just a couple of minutes. Then we've got a big lengthy time where we can ask some questions. Okay. So finish it on that high, because we aim to just send the MC out who goes, wow, God is here. Amen. Slap a high five. Grab a seat, welcome to Arise, and we're on with the next part of the service. That's our plan. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then to use that ministry time for 5 minutes where we're really having an encounter with God.
Nice.
Okay. So good. Yeah. So that's it. You've also got my blow by blow on how we plan to do the rest of that service. So take a look at that.
Would you like to touch at all on final praise, that last minute?
Oh, not really, but I mean, basically, you're aiming for a minute. pick a song that peaks quickly.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
always funny when you know you've got 1 minute for a final song and people start with the song that starts real low and they start from the beginning. You're like, uh-oh, there's not a chorus for 90 seconds, you know. It's like, so pick a song that you can, just, I can feel it breaking out, walls are coming down, right? Then there's this, that, great, thanks everybody, have a good lunch.
Yeah.
Like we do want to finish that service on a high,
Yeah.
but what we don't want to do is have 3 minutes to get there. Okay, that 60-second window.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, that minute's quite short, but I think there's many ways to get to it.
Oh, totally.
So for example, come out of next steps, you can pop straight in, with the big instrumental, and then go in verse, chorus, end.
Yeah.
Could go straight into the chorus, and so start with the chorus and finish on a bridge, and you're done.
Yeah.
I think there's more ways than to get that final one good. So
Sounds good. And honestly, like if it's not possible, let us know. It's what's in the run sheet every week. So maybe you're just like, just do what you want. I don't know how it rolls. But I don't really care. But if we can get it to a time, 1 minute, that's a starting point. If that doesn't work, we'll change it. But let's start there. Yeah.
John, how are you feeling? Or what are your thoughts around the fact that we've increased the worship time in the mornings? And traditionally, I guess our mornings, we pastor the breakthrough, we sing declarative songs. What are your thoughts for worship leaders in the mornings? I know you've talked a lot about the fact that we've actually got a bit more space now. But how do we maintain that feeling of up with that extra time? Or is that something that we should be trying to do still?
Well, look, I think one of the things that I'm reading Ezekiel at the moment, and I won't spend too long here, but Ezekiel, the Bible said he sat where the people sat, and every time I read that phrase, I think that that's just so important for any minister, whether it be a praise minister, a worship minister, or a preacher. You have to sit where people sit.
Mm.
Now, in the morning, you've got to ask yourself, who are you leading in worship?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, there's a big difference between your life when you are 19 years old and the world is your oyster, and when you're 32 years old, you wish you had more money and you have a sick child.
Yeah.
It's just a different season of life.
Yeah.
And so we've got to think about the fact that on Sunday mornings, that congregation is not young adults.
Yeah.
It is young families and families. So that's really your bread and butter. I mean, we're not trying to get older as a church, but if you think about those people being who you're leading, well, if your baby hasn't slept for 3 nights, you don't want somebody who is trying to lead you in a way that is very somber and heavy.
Yeah.
You don't want to sing, I'll give it all for you today, God. You're like, God, I just want to find you today, So
Yeah.
So I think it's very important to remember that. So when we say the words pastor the breakthrough, that's been about recognizing that you're trying to take somebody who's come in hoping that they can make it through the next season, or with fears, or with, things that aren't going right. Excuse me. And we recorded that, but we're trying to get it to a point where they are actually finding that way above it. So worship has that power to, as we elevate God, we elevate ourselves, right? So that's the goal. We're trying to lift them out. He took me out of the mud and mire. He put a song of praise in my heart. So that's how God lifts us out. So we want to sing songs that are going to help people to get there.
Yeah.
So that's why we choose the songs that we do for the mornings.
Yeah, awesome.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's awesome.
So then at night, you can sing songs that are different to the morning, because the people that you're singing them with are in a different season of their lives.
Yeah.
And then every so often you throw in the songs that you'd sing at night in the morning.
Yeah.
Because, everybody needs to surrender their all to Jesus. Everybody needs to say, I will go to the nations for you, God, whether you've got sick children or not. But you do need to be cognizant about where things are at. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's good.
So you start with song selection.
Yeah.
but then you're still trying to enjoy the atmosphere of God's freedom, God's presence, you know. But we want to unlock that first. You know, personally, I think the hardest thing, and this is entirely subjective, but one of the hardest things that happens is when churches create lingering God's presence moments when people haven't been led into God's presence yet. It's just you know, it's like, yeah, but not now. Like, get me there, and then let's do that. You know what I mean? Like,
Cup of tea on the doorstep.
a cup of tea on the doorstep. Yeah, that's an analogy I used once, right?
But some
Yeah, we're not trying to give people a cup of tea on the doorstep because there's no permanency to that moment. If you get me to your lounge room, if I'm sitting on your couch, then that cup of tea bought me 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? So we aren't there to ask people to wait in God's presence before we get them into God's presence, because it's the wrong situation. So how do you know when you got people into God's presence? You know, and you never know perfectly, and you never get it right, but you just go with what you feel, and that's the best that you can do. Is that?
It's great.
This is awesome because it's like a clear brief of exactly what we want to be doing. I've got a question about how to do some of these things.
Yeah.
Because what you know, we were talking about praise. If the service is not going the direction that we would like it to go, we're not creating the momentum we'd like to create. What can we do to create a win, to get a win?
Great. Let me start with what you shouldn't do.
Great.
I know that's a bad thing to start with. What you shouldn't do is go through the next 7 days and expect next week to be any different.
Yeah, right.
The worst thing you could do is not react to something, repeat it, and expect it to be different the following week.
Yeah.
So if the congregation of any campus is not engaged in praise, that is a problem.
Yeah.
We are a happy, clappy, jumping, shouting, cheering, worshiping, you know, crying, laughing church. That's who we are.
Yeah.
So if our church is not what our church is, then we have to do something about that. So I would be saying, man, okay, we need service review, right? In your campus, where is the service review? Where are we talking about that? What can we as a worship team do? Is there a production problem? I mean, we just had one of our campuses where praise is not working right now, and I sat down with the creative manager, worship pastor, campus pastor, and a couple other people, and just said, okay, praise is not working, you know, in this particular service, what's going on? And the creative manager said, well, we can't get, people aren't ready when the service begins. So I spend the first praise song trying to get the camera operators at their stations, trying to get the lighting guy awake to what's going on. I have to chase the worship team on stage because they're normally late. And so then she's like, so it seems to me like actually it's not the start of the service, it's the warm up to the start of the service. So that's why it's not working. Well, what's great about that is easily changeable. But we've had that same problem for a few weeks. So what you can't do is ignore it.
Yeah, totally.
If you lose 1 week as a football team, you're not going to go through the next week without asking why didn't it work. So that intentionality is very important. And I think everybody's probably feeling that sense of because normally what we do is fat nothing, and then we roll into the next Sunday hoping it's going to be better. It won't be. It'll be exactly the same unless something changes. So lead up, lead sideways, lead down. Right? So lead up. If praise isn't working, nobody's praising, then you need to go to your worship pastor, campus pastor, and just say, we're not getting a breakthrough in praise, we have to do something. Awesome. Does that make sense?
So good.
I don't know what it is, but we're going to attack this every way we can. We're going to talk to our staff about engaging in praise. We're going to talk to our leaders in the next leaders meeting about getting, we're going to do something different.
It's awesome.
So that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
In the moment, one of the greatest things to remember about people is that they will do what you tell them to do, and they won't do what you don't tell them to do.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
They will do what you tell them to do, and they won't do what you don't tell them to do. So, and there is a point where independence and rebellion kicks in, obviously, but one of the things I would be saying is clap your hands. Everybody clap, and you got to blink last sometimes, team. Blink last. Do you understand the concept?
Okay.
Like if I look at people and I say clap and they don't clap, I keep looking at them until they do. Like I don't just accept that. It's just like, come on, everybody clap. No, come on, I mean everybody clap. Come on, clap your hands.
Yeah.
And then everybody jump. Now, what most of our praise leaders do is they say everybody jump, and then they turn their back. Right?
Yeah, right.
Everybody jump,
And
and I'm not looking at you. And I can tell you what happens. The young people jump, and nobody else jumps.
Yeah.
So don't lead no one, and don't just lead the front. Lead the room.
Yeah.
So then, I don't do this very often because I'm 46 and it's kind of getting past my season of life to do it. But if I want everybody to jump, I'm going to stand at the front of the stage and I'm going to say, "Come on, everybody, jump! 3, 2, 1, jump!" And then I'm going to grab my hands, put them out wide, and I'm just going to go like that as I jump.
Yeah.
So I'm jumping, and I'm saying, and I'm looking at everybody. I'm leading the whole room. Which so you got to lead that room.
Yeah.
Now I'm trying to teach you how to do.
No, this is
That's
good
good.
though.
It's
This is
helpful.
really, really.
I hope it helps, and if it doesn't, just know that I'm having a crack out here, people.
It's really good.
Have we got any questions from anybody who's there? If you've got a question, just type it in.
We can see your chat, by the way.
You can see the chat.
So if you're part of the live thing, you can just chuck up a question.
John, how do we know when a service isn't going well?
You gut.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see some things, obviously, like if people are clapping, they're clapping. If they're not clapping, they're not clapping. If they're singing, they're singing. If they're not singing, they're not singing. And to make it clear, our goal is that 90% of people, 95, are all singing.
Yeah.
That's definitely a goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that in praise, people are clapping. That in worship, we want some people to lift their hands.
Good question.
So those are some obvious ones.
Callum's got a question.
Would you say that our focus for praise specifically is more on building momentum rather than innovation? Yes.
Good question.
The question, you can only innovate when you have forward momentum.
Great.
Does that make creativity requires prosperity in every culture?
Wow. Yes.
Yeah.
True.
So are there creative people in Africa? Absolutely. Of course there are. They're humans. They're God's people. Is there a lot of art coming out of Africa? No. Why? Because they're trying to get bread to eat today.
Yeah.
So the more prosperous the culture, then the more creative the culture. So you need forward momentum to then innovate and be creative. So what I want you to do is to think, we need a breakthrough on this. So we bring it back and we do what we do very, very well.
Right.
And then out of that, maybe we'll see. But I think we're trying to say that the innovation or the ideas, you've got the ability to be pre-planned before you get to a Sunday.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
But once we get to the Sunday, we want it to be clear and planned and executed well. Love you, Callum. You're the best.
You are.
I'm trying to get as fit as you, bro. I'm doing F45 5 days a week, man. I'm chasing you down.
It'd be great to really hear your thoughts about interacting with the ministry time, what it's like, what the expectations are on the band, what are the key indicators of success in that time, and like personally, you interact with the band, a lot. Like maybe what you're looking for, but then generally, like what's a win for our teams for ministry time?
For the ministry time, I think what you're trying to do is just pick up during the preaching. You're trying to pick up on the vein of the message, and then pick the right song for it. And like I said, I think you guys absolutely crush it. Are you going to get it? Are we going to get it perfect every time? Of course not. It's impossible. Do I preach perfect every time? No. So then there's always going to be humanity to it, but I would say we're one of the best churches on earth at picking that right song, coming into it the right way. Then it's just about working with that minister so that the preacher, so that the preacher is able to lead what they want to lead, and then you get their back to execute that plan. So then it's just walking that line between, I'm going to lead confidently, but I'm also going to be looking for the first whisper that it's my time to step back. So you're just kind of doing that. You don't want to close the door on the fact that they could start to get involved and you take a back seat, but you don't want to also take a back seat when actually it's just about your moment to go for it. Does that make sense?
It does.
That's awesome.
And that's about it, really. Just work it. Look for the signals. You touched on speaking out during worship. How are you, Alex? How would you gauge this for praise? Should praise leaders be talking and speaking out more or less? That's a great question, Alex. And if I could just say it like this, I would say in Arise, our praise leaders don't tell people what to do enough. I want you to tell people what to do. And really, that's just everybody sing, everybody clap, everybody shout, everybody jump. Like, just tell them. If you want them to clap, give them the clap. If you want them to sing, say, come on, everybody sing. Everybody shout. Just actually lead them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Is that enough?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Jacob, conference time restrictions are standard, but any room for spontaneous worship moments?
What's he trying to say?
Conference time restrictions are standard.
But any room for spontaneous worship moments this year?
Conference is our church's camp moment. So, it is our camp.
Yeah.
That's the roots of this thing. And if you've ever been to a Christian camp, Jacob, you probably know what I mean. It's where the meetings are a little bit less prescribed. The run sheets are there, but the clock doesn't count absolutely. So I'm going to give you a little bit more freedom at a Rise conference, as a worship leader in particular. I don't want the praise leaders to take 12 minutes because that just means that we're then committing ourselves to 30 minutes of praise and worship. I just want 8 minutes of glory. Do you know what I mean? For praise, I just want it to be phenomenal for 8 minutes. And then for our worship leaders, we're not going to run to that. You've got to be finished at the hard time, because I'll be emceeing basically every main rally. And when I'm going to flow with you. And I want you to take us into the heavens as a worship team and get us there and unlock it. So it's our camp. It's a camp. It's a camp with a really great lighting rig, but that's what it is. I want it to feel like I'm at a camp. So that's the DNA of this conference. I hope, Jacob, that answers your question. Yeah, good. You've got it. You've responded.
Nice.
Okay, Tommy, what would you say about the Pursuit of Excellence? It's a conference run by Paul de Jong. What would you say about the Pursuit of Excellence as a worship team and building a great worship set versus surrendering to God and resting in His presence rather than striving? Yeah. I think it's a tension to be managed rather than, something that you, sometimes in life it's like there are two railway tracks. So I think with worship, sure, if you focus on culture, then you're going to go for everybody lifting their hands and everybody singing,
Mm.
but you might have no presence at all.
Mm.
But then, if you just rest in God's presence and you don't strive for that sense of participation, culture, and excellence, well, I don't think this is ever going to be sustainable because you haven't built the foundation underneath it for it to be sustainable. So I think it's always going to be just one of those things that you're trying to wrestle one then the other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
You guys want to add anything?
Yeah. I think the way that you're addressing it's really fantastic. So basically, we're saying we're pushing, we're lifting up God, we're doing this, and we're like we have a role and a job and a responsibility. We're also looking to God to come in, make a huge impact, and we do rest in His presence.
Yeah.
And we can't just have one.
No.
You can't. We literally can't.
Yeah, like for me, one of the things I love the most is just moments when you've just broken that service open and then you just like everybody stand there and just a keyboardist just plays or an acoustic guitarist is playing the guitar and the whole place is just lost in God's presence.
Mm.
But if you start a worship set that way,
Yeah.
it's going to be terrible.
Yeah.
That's the cup of tea and the doorstep.
There's a cup of tea in the
Yeah.
doorstep.
Yeah.
So, and you don't bring people through the front door just by yelling at them.
That's right. Yeah.
So there is faith, there is planning, and all of that, and there is prayer. Like you've got to pray to get this breakthrough.
Mm.
But it is also about knowing where you are, and knowing where you are, then responding to that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. In terms of keeping unity between our different services, is there going to be any effect on how Rise Youth Praise and Worship is done, or the changes being made to our Sundays? Oh, that's a great question, Ben. I would say, yeah, good question. Let's go away and do some work on that for you.
Sure, Megan.
That's my cute way of saying I haven't thought about it and I have no idea.
Just so.
How about we leave it at that?
Yeah.
On to the next one. Okay, Stuart Savage. You've got a great surname.
So good.
Come
It's from Whangarei.
on. It's where all the savages live.
I'm not sure if we can.
I was thinking of Aaron Helverson. I mean, Lucas Helverson when I said that. We need to end worship up after 16 minutes of worship. What are a few ways to achieve this other than finishing on a trash? That's a great question, Shahan.
Yeah.
Yeah. As a non-musician, I'm going to segue that to you. Go.
Absolutely. I think, especially looking at that, the Run Sheets document and the things that Pastor John has passed out, what he used a really key word, and I think that word is pinnacle. And I think it's more important for us to be pinnacling and the vibe, the atmosphere, what we create than how. So then the creativity aspect of that is actually up to us. But the key part of that is we need to end strong. We need to pinnacle well. So in the same way as what you said, John, in that it would be poor of us, I guess, a minute to go, we start dropping it low, and now the MC comes off, and they've kind of got to revive it. The pinnacle is like a key momentum point where we can transition. So I don't think it necessarily needs to be a trash, but it needs to be up, and yeah, that's what I'd say.
Absolutely.
Trash is just an easy way to do that.
Yeah,
You know?
sounds fantastic. Can I just say something about songs at the moment? Because I just did write this down because, one thing that when we're approaching a Rise conference, which we are, we generally always want, when we go into a Rise conference or youth camp, summer camp or anything like that, we've always wanted that cry song. And if you've been around for a while, you might have been involved in conversations about this. We're always like, we want that cry song,
Yeah.
I'll give it all for you, we'll lay it all at your feet, we're going to worship, go for you, God. Because that's our DNA. Like we are, as a church, we are a setting people on fire, sending them out into the world to change the world church. That's what we are. And I don't apologize for that. But in this season of time, I'm worried that, I'm not worried at all. I don't feel like that is the right thing for this season. Not that it's wrong. Not that if I see one in our run sheets, I want to remove it. What I'm saying is, I feel like what's really important for our church right now is that, and for the church right now, is that people sing songs of worship that connect them to Jesus, to God, that people sing songs of worship as opposed to just songs of soul-warming lyrics.
Yeah.
That people sing songs of adoration, that people sing songs of intimacy, people sing songs of connection. So that's what I really want you to be thinking about as a worship team, that these are what we're trying to deliver. I mean, the truth is we've got a lot of worship songs coming out into the Christian world right now that are songs of worship and melody.
Yeah.
And scripturally they are correct. Biblically they align. No problem with the theology. But if I can just be this honest, what they aren't is worship.
Yeah, good.
Because the angels don't circle the throne of God saying, "You love me."
That's right.
They circle the throne singing, "You are holy."
Yeah.
And our worship is about God and toward God and for God. And it's not about me and toward me and for me.
Yeah.
So I want us to sing songs that are towards Him. Does that make sense? I just feel that that's what people need right now. And if you can write some, please do that.
Do it.
Because that's really what we need right now, is just some songs that are about Him, about Jesus, about the Father, about the power of God, about the love of God, about the greatness of our God. Write me some songs like that. We'll crank them out quick.
Come on, man. That's
Okay.
great.
Tommy, a push and pull kind of vibe. Were you using both ends of the spectrum and watching where you stand? Okay, that was a comment.
That's coming.
If, this is probably a question from Aiden, if our worship leaders were to focus on and grow in one skill, what would that be?
Great.
Oh man, it's a great question.
Great question. Could I rephrase it? Is there a thing that you're seeing from worship leaders that you would like us not to do?
No, not really. I think that everybody does a great job. I really do. I really mean that.
Good job, team.
I think you do very well, and I want you to continue to do it, and I want you to do it with confidence. I think that what really makes the difference with a worship leader, if you're a worship leader and you're going to grow in one thing, I would just really encourage you that you can't take anybody where you haven't been yourself.
Yeah.
Like you shouldn't expect to unlock worship if you don't worship. And
Same with praise.
same with praise.
Yeah.
Same with
Same
praise.
with praise.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Like, Fiona just happens to be here in the room, so she's just a great example. But I could think of a lot of other worship leaders. But half the time on a Sunday night, Fiona will be on stage in the 5 p.m. in Wellington. The other half, her and Sean, normally sit just to the right of the sound desk.
Yeah.
Right? Now, whether you're on stage or whether you're in the congregation, she's worshiping.
It's true.
So then, there's no doubt, there's an easy reason why you're a great worship leader, and we could go around the room and say that about everybody, I'm sure, as well. But Chris, I only see you on stage, Chrissy Lee. So, but what I'm just using an example. But what I'm really saying is, we need people. Look, how do they teach people to know counterfeit money? How do you know when you've got a congregation in the presence of Jesus? Well, the way they teach people to spot the counterfeit money is they put hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of real dollars through their hands, and then they put in one counterfeit. And because they handle so many of the real, they spot the counterfeit because their intimacy with the real lets them know when the counterfeit is in their hands.
Yeah.
And the only way you can lead people successfully into the presence of God, guys, is when you know what it's like to be in his presence yourself. And that, unfortunately, can't
Not be microwave.
be microwaved.
Yeah.
You got to spend time in his presence. We need some worship leaders with spiritual authority. You know, I mean, Henry Seeley was telling me the other day that Kari Jobe doesn't actually like songwriting.
Wow.
Like, she doesn't care about it.
Wow.
Yet people fly her all over the world because she's a phenomenal worship leader.
Mm.
She writes songs only because her label wanted to put them out. I mean, I'm sure she likes it, but what she gets out of bed for is to lead people into God's presence.
Yes. Yeah.
So don't quote me on that with Kari. I'm just saying, you know, like we just got to be careful that we don't raise a generation of people who like the form of it and the poeticism of it and the, you know, the vibe of it rather than the intrinsic nature, which is to worship.
That's so good.
Yeah.
John, I mean, we've been going for almost an hour.
Oh, sorry, we need to
No,
shut it up.
I know you need to probably go soon, so I was just going to say thank you. Unless you feel free, it's kind of up to you if you want to keep going or.
I don't think this will be the last one that we'll do, is it? I mean, this is awesome.
Yes, it's amazing.
Like,
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Ben.
Sorry, I'm not I'm locking in something for the future.
Oh, please do.
I mean,
do
this
it.
is great, isn't
Yeah.
it? I mean,
Well, only if it's helpful for people, it's certainly fun for me. But
Yeah.
I'm just raving on.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, well, should we call it there?
Yeah. Can I just say one final thing, and that is, look. Again, more and more campuses, and if I'm in your location, just always remember this. Never judge in a moment whether I'm happy with you as a praise and worship leader by the look that is on my face, okay? I see everything in church services. I see leads that aren't coiled. I see rows that aren't half filled, that are half filled. I see one person sitting alone. I see lights that are turned on in corridors. Going through here is 10,000 things, and 99.9% of the time, if I don't look like I'm happy, it's not because of you. So if that ever comes into your head, silence it. And the second thing I would say to you is never listen to fear.
Right.
You know, have an inner confidence in yourself that when you get off stage, someone can talk to you about how you can do it better. But while you're up there, don't listen to the voice of fear that's trying to tell you that you're failing, you're not doing well, you're exceeding your brief, you're blah, blah, blah. That is the devil trying to shut down your gift. I want you confident, bold, courageous, having a go, making mistakes. I'll laugh at you when you make them with you. You know, I've made a ton myself. We should do a podcast on one of these mistakes John has made. But just get out there and make huge mistakes because you gave it your everything and you meant well and you did it to honor God and to lead people into his presence. And if that's your motive, you can't really stuff up. Just go for it.
So good.
Okay?
So good.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for joining in. And it's going to be a great few weeks, and we will see you all at conference in just a couple of weeks' time. So we'll see you later.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
In stream.
Awesome.